Hi, welcome to another episode of the Mashup 233 podcast. Today, we are going to have an interesting conversation. We rant about her and get frustrated at her state. I've spoken to many young Africans on different occasions, and the complaints are the same everywhere. Africa is ours, and the future belongs to us. But really, does Africa have a future? To the optimist, that's an outright yes. To the pessimist, Africa is doomed. However, what is the objective answer to this? The younger generation is frustrated with the older, but given what we see, we may perform worse than our forebears, despite the constant criticism. How do we revolutionize our mindset as young Africans? Stay tuned. Today seems like a good day to bring in some African spice. This is PK of the Mashup 233 podcast. Today we have an interesting mix of different nationalities to join us here for a very special conversation. So today we have myself, as usual, and there's Binta from Gambia, and
I'm Bilo from South Africa.
And Pilo from South Africa with the Amapiano vibe. And we have all the way from America, Kobe.
Kobe from America.
Exactly, but of Ghanaian origin. And then finally, Nigeriano the carry last person.
Hi.
Can you let us know who you are?
Okay, my name is Bukumi. Live in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Nigerian.
Yeah. Awesome. So, quick question. For me, growing up as an African, being a black person was a normal thing. It's nothing I was supposed to be concerned about. But to talk about the history of Africa, I'd say the first time I learned about the history of Africa was probably as far back as university. And when I say history, the first thing people may think about is slavery or colonialism. That's most of the time what we know as history, the history of Africa. But the actual history of Africa I learned about was in university, which was shocking to me. Why university? I don't know about you guys. When was the first time you learned about anything else apart from slavery or colonialism about Africa? When was the first time you learned about that?
Yeah, it's also the same thing with me. I started learning about Africa when I was in senior high school,
okay,
where I did history as a course.
Okay.
So I think more or less it's all about slavery. I think that's it. Yeah.
So anything else apart from slavery and colonialism, when was the first time you came into contact with that?
No. It's basically on colonization,
Okay.
slavery. I think that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
What about you, Mpilo?
I think similar to you as well. First time I heard about the generic whitewashed history of Africa with slavery and colonization was in primary school, like grade 7. But it was only really in university, I think, when I also made an effort to find out more beyond the slavery and colonial period that I started knowing about that history.
Cool. What about Bukumi? What about you?
Okay. So to be honest, I feel like when you first called me to join the podcast, I actually was like, oh, okay, like, am I the right person for this? Because like, I don't think that throughout in the context of or the confines of education, we're not really taught anything about Africa. I never came across anything. I think I had an idea of the slave trade. Most of what I knew was from what I read or what I watched, not even in the newspaper or anything. So I would say I did most of the reading outside school. I mean, 4 walls of schools. of school, and I don't even think I know everything. So pre-colonialism, I don't really know so much. I mean, like, I've not heard so much. Yeah, but yeah, that's about it.
I think for me, I started asking questions. Yeah, I mean, there's always a prelude to everything, but like everyone has said here, the fact that in consistently in primary and maybe secondary school, you only hear about these two main topics as African history, I found that problematic at a point, because there has to be a beginning of something. So Kobe, for you, when was this?
I think, like Bukumi said, a lot of my study about pre-colonial African history was outside of the academy. He was curious about the histories of our peoples, and I refused to believe that colonialism and slavery, as important as they are and as they continue to shape the contemporary social moment in Africa, were the whole of African history. So I started reading texts, people like Aikwe Arma, who led me to then Chancellor Williams, who led me to Basil Davidson, all in an attempt to reconstruct an extensive account of Africa's historical memory that goes beyond the colonial narratives. And I think that project started when I was in about high school. Yeah.
So that's so for you it was high school. What did you think is the reason for the sudden, I won't say reawakening, I won't call it that, but I'll give you a typical example. So in University of Ghana, for instance, I think last 2 years, the student body or the African Studies Department, one of your lecturers, I think Professor Ampofo, called for the pulling down of Gandhi's statue at one of the major facilities at the university, and it was eventually pulled down. And I think in Senegal, there's also been a reference to a certain General Faidherbe, who is in their colonial history, who has a statue in Senegal, and they've been calling for it to be pulled down. Why do you think it's becoming? Do you think it's millennials who are calling for these things, or it's just something that was meant to happen? Kobe, let's start from you.
Yeah, I think there are many factors that might account for the sort of decolonial mentality we see amongst young Africans today. I think one of the factors is the decolonial push in academic universities that started some decades ago, where scholars realized how lots of the texts we assigned and we are taught to read, be it in anthropology or sociology or literature, were texts that had colonial assumptions about African realities, right? So to give an example, you'll go to history, and to your point, African history was said to begin with the activities of the European actors. And I think a lot of scholars, Ajayi was a Nigerian historian, Sheikh Anta Diop, a lot of people decided to challenge those colonial narratives. And I think we are reaping the benefits of their intellectual activity decades ago today, right? I think that may be one reason that accounts for this new decolonial mentality amongst young Africans. But I think a second reason or factor may also be just technology. I think as the world becomes more interconnected and as racial justice issues, say in the global north where I am, assume more visibility, I think the discourses around racial justice issues, say in the US, also in turn inform and inspire activities, say in Brazil or in Nigeria. And I'm not making the point that what happens in the US then inspires activities elsewhere, but I'm making the point that I think people are more aware of what's going on in different communities around the world and are in constant conversation with each other. So I think, yeah, for me, it would be one, technology, and two, the attempts to decolonize academic institutions that started decades ago.
Okay. Impilo, is that the same thing happening in South Africa? Is that similar? Is there a similar movement in South Africa?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you asked for South African perspective specifically, because I was going to give an answer from that point of view. I think I share the same sentiments with the previous speaker in that what technology has done, coupled with globalization, is that it's continued a conversation that has been ongoing for some time. So for us in South Africa, because of our history of apartheid, I think we've always been a very racially conscious people as a Black community, and not only because of like our history, just also because of how we are still within the legacy of apartheid. We only like 25 years young, so 27 years young. So there still is a lot of like residue of apartheid that we're dealing with. But even in that time of struggle, we had a lot of leaders, your Chris Hannies, your Steve Bikos, who are really always speaking about us being conscious to, the struggles of, I guess the economic struggles, the class struggles, the racial struggles, the gender struggles even. And so I think what we are seeing with our generation right now is that we're taking on that conversation of like Black consciousness, and we're trying to practicalize it and really have it be realized in our time. And I think for us, similar to the situation with the statue of Gandhi here in Ghana, we also had a Rhodes Must Fall. So in one of our universities, we had a statue of Cecil Rhodes, who really did, a number in colonizing.
Rhode Island.
Yes.
Was it Rhode Island named after him?
I'm not too sure. Probably it was, because he was really like a big colonizer. So
okay.
There was a statue of him in one of our universities, Rhodes University, it's even named after him. But what you call this? Yeah, the students, they were like, how can we be this, institute of like intellectual innovation and all of this robust conversation, but we still have this figure that represents some of the most oppressive time, in our history as a people. And that movement, it led to the fall of the statue, but then it caused like this dynamo effect, in that after that we were like, okay, we done with the statues.
What's next?
What's next? And you saw like now South Africans were having a conversation about the street names, and you're like, we need to change some of the street names. And from there on, we had a conversation now about education, which led to the fees must fall eventually. So and it's still an ongoing conversation. So yeah.
Binta, do you think these efforts are likely to achieve anything? Do you like these? Okay, so let's take down the statue. Let's do this. Do you think that's it? Do you think that's the end, or you think? What do you think?
Like, I think in this case, bringing down those statues I think it's making us as Africans to realize like who we are. Like, we are becoming more conscious of we being Africans. So we have to think as Africans, we have to do things the way we think as Africans. But having those statues around will keep on reminding us like during the colonial days. So I think it's a good idea that we do away with them. I can remember there was a time we have a statue, some statues have been demolished in my country, where you have those white people called, one of them was, James something. Of course, is one of those explorers. And our main hospital right now, although the name was, before it's been colonial name, and now since we've been so conscious about ourselves as Africans, we think we have to do everything as Africa, everything has to be African based. We have now changed those names to those that have participated in our independence.
Okay.
Instead.
I feel
yeah that. So I think it's a good idea, like we do away with those statues and then put the people that have really fight for our independence instead.
Okay,
yes.
I see your point. Bukumi, do you think, let me go direct, do you think Africa has a future? Do you think, because there are so many conversations, like we've said, that's problem, like Kobe said, started many years ago, and so I've built up to this point. But very little seems to have changed, really. Do you think Africa is the future? Sorry, can't hear you. I think your sound is off. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know my sound was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I think Africa has a future? So it's hard to say because from where I stand now, there's so much negativity, and I feel like we've not even gotten to the point where we actually see ourselves as Africans. We still have like tribal, still have this individualistic. Even in Nigeria, for example, we don't even see ourselves as Africans. We not talk of as Nigerians. I mean, like, everybody just sees like there's this tribal difference and all of that. So for you to actually see Africa having a future, there should be that form of, I don't know, unity or oneness, or we seeing ourselves as one. Take, for example, one step towards the future we've been trying to like build for the last, I don't know how many years, is the AfCFTA. We've had so many troubles trying to even bring that just one agreement together. And, you know, there's been drawback from different countries, Nigeria being one of them, just finally signing to, you know, finally signing into the agreement. So basically, I can't say if, like, from where I stand, it's hard to say really, because I feel like
are you being politically correct? Because I think everyone's trying to be politically correct.
No, I don't want to.
Wait, you're being honest in the fact that you are not sure.
I sound like a prophet of doom, right? Do I think Africa has a future from where I stand right now? No, because there's so much difference. There's so much we still have to do and all of that. But I think that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's hard to say we have a.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I.
That's fair. I think you raise a certain point about like how different we are and ethnic and tribal differences. I spoke to a South African friend of mine, John, and he was somewhere in 2019, and he told me we were talking about Africa's problems basically, and he mentioned the fact that in South Africa you have so many tribes that on a particular decision, there's so much Xhosas and Zulus, and everyone has to have an opinion on the matter, and that sort of delays like stuff that has to go. Is that the case, or that was his single opinion?
It depends on what the issue is, you know. I think one thing I will say, when it comes to politics or economics, South Africa is divided more on racial lines than it is on ethnic group.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So
that's the main problem.
Yeah, so I think on in terms of like the division, it would be more, you know, it's the blacks, it's the Indians, it's the colors, it's the whites, and that's really where our division lies.
Okay. So then we have the other division of Francophone versus Anglophone. That's another major problem. And I think Bukumi and I have had a conversation about. I'll give you an example. We try to push the ECO. The ECO is a West African currency. Now, let me summarize this whole dramatic. Ghana, Nigeria, Gambia, the Anglophone guys decide that, we want to push with this ECO, because mind you, ECO, we started having discussions for the ECO as far back as when I was in GSS. That's it's a long time. And so I think 2018, we really decided we're going to do this. So negotiations went all the way to the final stage. Everyone agreed that we're going to have an ECO. And then Francophone West Africa, particularly Ivory Coast, decided that they were going to have a conversation with France. So they come back to everybody had decided that this was what's going to happen. And then France, Ivory Coast or Frankfurt, West Africa comes back and says that, we're going to sign this thing only if we rename the CFA franc as the ECO. And the rest of us were like, no. I mean, if there's any country that's supposed to even be more upset about this thing, it's Ghana, because Ghana probably has the strongest currency in the sub-region. And we are putting our currency on the line. And we are saying that let's do this thing. Now you're saying we should take up a currency that even the French don't use anymore. And so now the thing has fallen into water again. So apart from the ethnic, we have this other regional divisions that. So when I ask the question that does Africa have a future? Does Africa have a future? I'm not preempting an answer, but I really want an honest opinion as to like how millennials feel about Africa. So Kobe, give me a response. Do you think Africa has a future?
That is such a difficult question.
It's difficult.
And yeah, it's a really difficult question because, as Bukumi said, when we look at where Africa is today, some of the issues that are taking place in South Africa, some of the tensions around the elections that will be taking place in Kenya in August, what's been happening in Nigeria, it's very difficult to be hopeful about a brighter tomorrow. But when I speak to some of my friends and my peers who are on the continent and some of those in the diaspora over here, and when I look at some of the activities and projects they're engaging in, I have a little bit of hope that even if we don't see that economic independence in our own lifetimes, we can at least make Africa slightly better than it was when we were growing up. And I honestly think, and maybe this is my bias because I'm still in school, but I honestly think one way to overcome the sort of ethnic, linguistic differences, overcome patriarchy and sexism, starts with a honest account of African history that shows that we have like a shared sense of identity, you know? I think that if we can debunk these colonial narratives that make it seem like Francophone Ivorian is completely different from Anglophone Nigerian. If we are able to find a way to talk about our shared identity, then that might provide a basis for the sorts of continental unity and solidarity that we need to make Africa a better place tomorrow. So I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm slightly hopeful.
That's very fair. I like that response. Binta, do you, Professor Lumumba, the famous Pan Africanist, right, says that Africa might be recolonized in 25 years. Do you agree? Do you think it's all within the same discussion? Do you think that's possible, or you think he was just being dramatic?
I think he could be right.
Gambia, for example, do you see Gambia being recolonized?
Hey, he could be right.
By, say, the Chinese.
He could be right. Yeah, for instance, looking at the Chinese right now, they have already conquered our sea.
Okay.
They have already conquered our sea. Most of our fishing centers have been taken over by the Chinese. So I think what Lumumba said could be true. Right now, we are even struggling. Like a Gambian is now struggling to get a fish. For a meal. In those days, we used to have fish in abundance, locally being caught by our fishermen. Right. But right now, since the Chinese came with these big, hooks and nets, they were able to capture like even those small fishes that can at least regenerate, and then we have more. But fish has become more scarce, and now what they are doing now is that they catch these fishes and then sell it to these big let's say hotels and even export it. Some will even sell it back to our own people at a very exorbitant prices. So I think what Prof. Lumumba have said he may be right, because the way I am seeing things, and our government are not doing anything about it.
Well, we'll come to those guys later. Let me ask you this question: how do you think? I think we got here by systematic, like we become so comfortable, right? And comfort, maybe because, I can't blame anyone who decides to choose comfort, right? But we've chosen comfortable over comfort over our progress. And I think that's how we got here. And I think the narrative for the millennial African probably has to change if we want things to change. Because I see us complain a lot, but I really don't see the average African interested in doing the hard things to get us to like a better place. Like Kobe said, with the people who did it like 30 years ago, I don't think young Africans are willing to put in that much effort. But we seem to complain a lot about the current state of affairs. Now we can talk about the economic engineering and the whole matrix and, the trade imbalances, and you can take a critical look at it during this whole pandemic and how the even distribution of things like vaccines became about territories, and this is something as basic as that. At what point do you think all of this went wrong in Pilo? Where do you think things started taking a downward spiral? Because I feel we need this assessment in order to find practical solutions, how not to repeat these things. So where do you think things went wrong, in your opinion? Maybe for South Africa, post-apartheid, you guys were on a roll, everyone was rooting for you guys, and then Rainbow Nation, right? And then and then we get to this point and we start seeing South Africa having power crisis and this and that, and where do you think things really went wrong? Not with people, but at what point? Where do you think you lost it?
I want to tie the answer I'm going to give now with the previous question that you are asking. But I think for me personally, and maybe this is just the activist in me, I don't know. I think what went wrong is when we got tired of fighting, I think we were like, all right, we've arrived.
Exhausted,
we've arrived. And I don't know what gave us this disillusion that now it's the responsibility of the state to continue the project of our development, our advancement as a people. Because I think a common thread I see, whether I'm having conversations with my friends, my South African friends, or my, Zambian friends or Kenyan friends, Nigerian friends, whatever it is, you really realize that there is this huge reliance on the government, and that it is the government's responsibility to give us our progress, our developments, etc., etc. The government has a role in part, yes, but realistically speaking, with the numbers that we have on this continent, with just the geography and the size, our government really cannot do everything that it cannot. And I think we do have a leadership crisis. We've known this for years, but we fight for a time and then we lose momentum. And so I think now, for me, it's like we just lost our fight. We just lost the momentum. And now coming on to whether we have a future or not, I think that is dependent on us, right? And what it is that we are willing to sacrifice. And I really like what you said about how we have gotten comfortable as a people. The work that I do is within the development space. And I think for me, one thing I've seen lacking amongst our peers in terms of them either being activists or advocates or whatever it is that they're doing is that firstly, I think we don't have a singular agenda. As young people, we are the masses, but our problem is we are pulled in each and every single direction. And if history is to teach us anything from our previous leaders, is that they had a singular goal. If it was getting rid of colonization, if it was getting, taking white European people outside of the country, it was a singular mandate that everyone understood, whether you were literate or not, we knew what the goal was. I think the second thing is also, we don't know, we do know who our enemy is, but I think it's difficult to confront the enemy because it's an enemy that looks like us now. It's no longer the European and, you know, the person who came in the ships. It's your uncles, you know, it's our grandfathers, essentially. And so it's like, to a certain degree, because of culture and this whole idea of respectability, it's kind of difficult, I think, sometimes to confront our leaders. And then I think the last thing also, just like how I've said, what are we willing to sacrifice as a people? Are we willing to sacrifice this idea of gaining, you know, this material wealth, you know, attaining a certain kind of lifestyle, you know, reaching certain, I guess, goals that the West has said define what success is? Are we willing to forego that? Because as we've seen with any kind of change that comes, people are going to get arrested. People are going to die. People's lives are going to be inconvenienced immensely. But it's the sacrifice that has to happen. And I think if you're going to learn anything, for example, let's look at the 7 tigers in Asia. They had a whole generation that was made to sacrifice their leisure, their freedoms, you know,
to get to this
the point where they are. And so I think because we're not asking ourselves these hard questions of what we're willing to sacrifice, it then makes it difficult for us to mobilize and organize, you know, to reach this kind of Africa that we want to reach.
Okay, Bukumi, you wrote an article this last year. Was it last year? About the AFTA and AFCTA and how it's supposed to your sound is off again. How it's supposed to re-engineer maybe African trade. And I don't know, maybe you can tell us what you think may happen. But the imbalances are like almost impossible. I mean, take even digital distribution, right? On our podcast, or even let me use Africa's biggest YouTuber. He's a Ghanaian, Wodemaya. What Wodemaya earns as an African YouTuber compared to what, even though he's pulling probably the same numbers or close to what maybe someone at his level pull, he's not earning the same amount someone over there is earning. So so tell me what you think. Do you think we can surmount this hurdle? Or what can we do to surmount the hurdle?
I didn't really get the question.
So in terms of trade imbalances, right? You wrote an article last year. Yes. So how do we surmount these, economic hurdles?
Okay, so thanks. So since I wrote the article till now, that I think it was 2020. It was 2020.
Oh yeah, it was 2020.
But yeah, a lot of things have changed, and I think that there have been discussions to actually further enforce or enact all of the agreements. So yeah, trading. I feel like. So I don't know if it's like a thing. I'm Pan African and all of that, but there's this sort of selfishness amongst African countries. Like I said, I think it's like more of identity. We don't really see ourselves as one. I'll start from that. Like the fact that we don't even see ourselves as Africans, right? So it's actually even for a country like Nigeria and Benin Republic, which is like we're almost from the same source, we don't even see them as part of us. So the trade, relations even between Nigeria and Benin is quite strained. Like a lot of people in Nigeria don't even we have this sense of superiority to like maybe countries around us. I don't even think for most youths, we don't even know the countries that surround us in Nigeria. So there's always that gap, and I feel like for trade to happen, they have to be like some sort of, we don't really need to like each other, but you need to really understand the context of trades and all of that. And so also there's also the fact that Nigeria in itself, we're a large population, and I think for a while our president actually stalled signing the agreement because we're going to be at the some people felt we were going to be at the receiving end of most of the
we
trades.
heard that,
like,
exactly.
As everybody's going to come dump their goods here, and we're going to be at the. So there's also that fight for what would I call it? Every country is trying to fight for their own benefits, and every country is trying to fight for their own for their self, which is good. But also, there's also I already said that it is a third fact that there's so many imbalances. There's some countries in Africa that are not as we are all like in the trenches, but there are some countries that is not as developed as even Africa, as other countries in Africa. So trying to like strike like trade agreements or all of that with some of these smaller countries like can prove quite difficult, like countries who are still constrained by technology and all of that. So do I see a way out of this? I'm not really sure. Like I said, lately I've been initially I used to be optimistic about a lot of things in Africa. And I remember when I was writing that article, it was from a standpoint of optimism. I actually felt like we could do it, yes, let's go there. But the more you understand the difference, you understand all of these constraints, it becomes, at this point, this particular point I am in, I think I'm just really, I'm quite overwhelmed. I think when you've seen like a lot of problems, a lot of, yeah,
I mean, which is fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you don't really know the way out. You're just like, okay, how do we do this? How do we, because I feel like there's so many, and that's why I started from identity and a problem of, it's more mindset, it's more like internal than even external. If you can't overcome the barriers, the physical, the mindset, the mental barriers, the fact that we don't even see ourselves as brothers or anything, we might not be able to make so much change on like economic front or all of those things. Yeah. So to be honest, I feel like it also boils down to the presidents, like the leadership. Africa lacks leadership, like good leadership. I feel like a part of it, that's one part I know that might be able to. Okay, so let me just chip in. Sorry.
Wait. Do we? Sorry. Let me ask this question. Do we lack, or because in some few cases we've had inspirational visionary leaders, but they were killed? How about that? So is it a case of lack, or it's a case of what we call that? Because let me explain why. There's an experiment called the 5-monkey experiment, right? So the experiment, I'm sure those who are listening can check that out. 5 monkeys were put in a cage, right? In a zoo. No, it was an experiment. So in the cage, they gave them access to everything, right? To the plane and all of that. And it's a psychological experiment, by the way. So when they introduced this banana from outside, put the banana inside, let it hang. And so the monkey saw it and went like, oh, let's go and grab because it's a banana, right? What do we do with the banana? We eat it. So they go for the banana. And when they go for the banana, now the person outside sprays them with water. Very vicious amount of water. She sprays them and then they fall. So they kept on doing that to the point where they realized that this is impossible. Let's just leave the banana over there. Then they introduced a new monkey into amongst the 5. I think they take one out and introduce a new one. Now the new one sees the banana and he's like, why are you guys sitting out this banana there? Why are you two going for it? And he goes for the banana and he's also sprayed. So that's done repetitively for some time. And then they introduced a final monkey. And when they did that, now what happened was that the other monkeys ended up beating the other one, the new one, from going to touch the banana because of how they've been conditioned. So I don't know. I hear I say a lot talk about leadership, and yes, it may be a problem. I do think it's a problem. I think it is. We have a leadership crisis. But don't you also think we've been conditioned to become this way? Our leadership has been conditioned to come this way. Bukume.
Okay. When you say we have been conditioned, I would like to ask by who? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we don't know. Maybe they are aliens. Yeah. Maybe they are.
Yeah, because it's actually weird that most African nations or countries have similar problems.
Exactly.
And I begin to wonder
Why?
Yeah, like why do we have like okay, so yeah, you made a very great point by saying that visionary leaders have been killed in the past. Then it actually weakens my argument on leadership, on the fact that, but I still think that, of course, killed by who? By the people or people in leadership. I don't know.
We don't
actually
know,
totally you weakened my argument. So really when you I don't know who conditioned us this way, really. I've thought about it a few times. I don't know who conditioned us this way. I think that I'm not really sure. I'm not pro-Western or think that Westerners are better. But when Westerners actually make decisions or they try to build, they actually do. They put a lot of work in nation building.
I agree.
Like in a lot of work that like they do it for the future. They see the future. They're like, this is the kind of nations we want to build, and they put in the work. They're like, let us build this nation.
We need to learn that.
So I might not be I might not be able to speak for other African countries, but for Nigeria, you see people that actually, like people in leadership or anything, like they're not even thinking about, they're only thinking about their pockets. They're not thinking about like actual nation building, knowing that if you actually build the nation, you would also get more prosperous.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because like just the point is, okay, sometimes right now where I stand, I'm like, okay, I'm not saying you should not steal government money, but please, can you help us do things in our country? Like, to tell you how frustrated I am.
Wait, so like, yeah, so in relation to that, let me ask you, Kobe, before you left, maybe you tell us a little about your story, but I wanted to ask you, what for you will be the African dream? You are living in America, there's an American dream. What's the African dream for you? Your sound, we can't hear you.
Yeah, firstly, I should just say that I'm not entirely sure the American dream is accessible to everyone.
Right.
And I think the American dream has an underside to it that we don't really discuss and talk about. Yeah. So I'm wary of elevating the American dream as an aspirational model for African communities.
Right.
But with that said, my personal African dream is for a continent where every single African feels like they can exercise their potential and become their best selves in Africa without having to leave the continent chasing resources.
But you do realize
my African dream.
Sorry, you do realize that now the African dream is, there are two things. Well, I can speak for Ghana. You speak to most young people, the African dream is you either go abroad. When I mean abroad, I mean Western abroad. or Europe. Or you get into public office. These are the two these are two things that characterize the African dream. So anyway, so go on with your, but you are saying that yours is that.
Yeah, but I think that's precisely my point. I think if we were to investigate why people feel like they need to leave Ghana or leave Nigeria or leave Sudan, it's because they feel that they don't have the requisite opportunities there to actualize their potential, build meaningful lives, do the work that their soul is concentrated.
I just wanted to chip that in, that it's not a feeling, it's a fact for most Did you get that? Sorry, I just had to chip that in. What feeling? We just look around and there's no hope. But yeah, go on.
Right. So I think because of that fact, and thank you, because of the fact that a lot of African countries don't provide the type of opportunities people need, folks decide to go abroad. So consequently, my African dream is the reverse of that situation, where in Africa, people feel like they can be their best selves and that they don't need to leave in order to live a beautiful and meaningful life.
Okay. Binta, your the Gambian dream, right? What does that look like?
It's same thing in Ghana or in Nigeria. Like right now, we are seeing lots of our youths die in the sea. We call it the backway.
Yeah, that's an issue I was coming to, but anyway, go on. Yeah,
Yes.
you can take on that.
So a lot of youths are taking the backway.
Yeah.
We call it the backway syndrome. So it's really affecting the country. Any youth that you ask a question right now, like what's
Like
your
they're
form
willing
for the
to- that's a mindset
rather-
I don't understand.
uh-huh.
Someone must be in a certain mental state
Uh-huh.
to choose death
Yes.
on the high seas
Yeah. Than to
over
stay.
life. Like I've struggled to.
That's true.
Yeah.
They have their family. They rather sacrifice. I have seen people selling their own compounds. You know, they stole money from their family business just to go
chase a dream.
to chase their dream. Like I don't know where the problem is
Yeah.
because I am also part of those youngsters. But what I normally advise people, those that are not pursuing their education or they are like dropouts, I cannot say those that take the bag way are those that are dropouts, but most of them are like that. But if you think you cannot do it like the black and white paper thing, we are all gifted in different ways.
Right.
So why not we sit down as youths and then think, what can I do? What am I good at? Because we are good at anything. I mean, we are gifted. Maybe it can be
But it's not that simple, you know that.
I know it's not that simple, but for that person, like even if you don't have the means, like what you can do is maybe tap people, the connections, the people that talk to people. Like I think this is what I want to do. Our leaders now, they don't do lots of assessments in terms of the needs of the youth. So that's one problem that they are lacking.
Okay.
Of course, we have we have youth empowerment project in the Gambia, but what is YEP doing? Sometimes I ask myself, YEP has been there for years, but people are still dying on the sea.
Yeah.
So maybe it could be they didn't go down, have this, conversation with the youth, ask them what do they need. Obviously, we know our problems better. So in order for them to help us, achieve our goals and dreams, they have to come to us, ask us what our needs are. And then all these projects for youth, employment, youth, whatever, will succeed.
Yeah.
But that is what they are lacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Pillow, I don't know that you have any relative who has stayed abroad, right? Apart from remittances, like every now and then, Africa has a chunk of, take Nigeria for example, like a lot, Nigerians are literally everywhere, Ghanaians are also everywhere. I don't know about South Africans, but the collective, what do you think can be done differently about that whole wave? Yes, I mean, sometimes maybe you can't stop it, like she's saying, people are still going to go. So how can we, make things different? Because most of the time when people do go, it benefits just them and maybe their families too. To a large extent, maybe their nuclear families. So how can we scale this thing up to,
To actually bring a solution?
Yeah, sort of, exactly, sort of.
I think it's also important to know that this problem of the brain drain essentially is a symptom, right? It's not a root of a problem. It's just a symptom of something else. And I think for me, and this is in part like the reason why I decided to do my master's, here in Ghana and not like in a European institution, is because I really wanted to understand when we say African problems, what do we mean exactly? Because I think and I'll tie this to your previous question, when we talk about the African dream, most people say, African solutions for African problems. And I found that this has become a very trendy phrase, but I'm like, do we actually know what our problems are? Exactly. Like, have we actually dissected them to understand who's benefiting from the problems, who's financing the problems that we actually have? Because we need to understand that it might be a disadvantage for the young people in Gambia for them to go across the sea, but somebody is benefiting from that because there are resources in the States, but they're not being channeled in the way that they need to be channeled. So I think for me, I think we really need to, and I don't know how this will happen because obviously, you have whistleblowers and people will like kill you for information, all of these things. But I think we as a people, when it comes to the bulk of our problems, as just one who's done like their studies in international relations, in development and all of that stuff, a huge bulk of our issues are caused by external geopolitical factors. So the West and Asia all wanting a chunk of the pie, and our leaders just being like, well, who's gonna pay the biggest price, right?
I call it the love triangle.
Yes.
We are in the middle.
Literally, like it's a tussle. And even like, for example, with the DRC, the conflict is being funded by people who want to benefit from the resources. So I think for me, I think of the first step, and I don't have a solution to this, I really don't, but I think one crucial thing that we do need is we need the truth.
Okay.
We need to know who's benefiting from the problems and who's financing the problems, because I think you cannot understand a problem fully, or you cannot have a solution for it until you know who is benefiting from that problem.
Yeah. So I think I may have I don't say it's a solution, but I had an idea recently. It's like an epiphany. We have like so many. Fine, let's call it a brain drain. They are gone. They're going. It's nothing you can do. People want a better life. They are going. They're going to chase a dream, whether it exists or not. They're chasing it. But we have a chunk of them over there. And like I said, apart from remittances, they send every now and then. Take $10, take $100. Africans have the ability to come together and probably form like VCs, venture capitalists, like pool resources together to fund things that can change the continent. And for me, that's the new Pan-Africanism. I think another reason why Pan-Africanism hasn't done so well in the last maybe 10 years or 20 years is because I think from its initial concept, it has, after achieving the success of independence and all of that, it sort of lost steam, like you said, and it lost the image. And so now it became about, wear cowries, wear tie and dye shirts, and show up at events and say, Nkrumah lives and all that, and Lumumba. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's nice. But the new Pan-Africanism has to be more in action. And having the mentality towards Africa. So the person could be white, but could be Pan-Africanist. And so, like I said, if Africans abroad pool resources together, put like, okay, we are taking $100. And yes, it's for their profits. Yes, they want profits. And so we are pooling resources together, setting up VCs that will fund. Maybe if it's research, fine, but anything that is going to benefit Africa eventually, that's what we're going to put our money in. And for me, that I feel could be a solution, because if we're looking to government, it's going to fail badly. And we're going to keep on sitting here having these discussions. There's a point where we take like the bull by its horns and go like, no, this is what we want to do. This is how and I feel the diaspora can lead that change. But another challenge is that the diaspora comes with this air. Hey, we are the Western train, we come to save you guys from all this, And I think that's been the problem, because you're going to be calmed down. Like, you can't come and tell us what to be doing with us. So I feel this has been so that's a way to solve that problem, because yes, you're pumping in money, and so you can dictate the mindset that should come with spending this money, right? We are bringing you money to solve this particular problem. It comes with a certain mindset. If you don't have this mindset, you are not going to touch. You can't have access to this money. And so and Africans are moved by money. So if they tell them that, no, this thing, you can't get this access to this money because you have to do meet so and so, things may start changing in that regard. And I feel that's the new Pan-Africanism we all need to develop.
I want to comment on that as well. Our people in the diaspora, I think they've started that.
Okay.
I have seen hospital in one of our poor communities I think it's in LRL in Soma. There is one hospital being built by our diasporas. So I think I want to agree with you on that. Because those communities are not having health centers. I mean, if they are to wait for our government to build those, the government, they have so many plans ahead. So you, the small community out there, they might not even know that you exist in the first place. So I think the diaspora...
Yeah, but beyond building, are they getting it run? Like, of course, you can put up the facility, right? And then the government puts in
the personnel
run like Europe at a European, or how the standard they've been trained at, so that the people can benefit. You get what I mean?
Yeah, I get the point here. Now that's where the problem lies. The structures have been there, but the service delivery is the problem. Yes, yeah.
I wanted to say I definitely agree with the idea that you're having. I just think this is where, for me, I feel the role of the state comes in, right?
Back to the state.
Yeah,
you think they can do that?
No. The state can't do this. I think what you're saying is something I always preach, that we have to take responsibility and we need to decide, like back to the whole thing I was saying about what are we gonna contribute. But where the state now actually can play a role where it's effective is with removing some of like these challenges that make it difficult to realize a dream like that. For example, I was telling Binta just last week that I was so shocked at how difficult it was to send money back home. I was like, it was really such an out-of-body experience, because I'm like, back home in SA, there's like so many ways. If you don't want to go to the bank, there's all these World Remit, there's Western Union, all these different things. But yeah, they were like, no, if you want to send, you have to go to the bank and it's going to cost you $700. $70 or $100. And I'm thinking to myself, let's say I want to start a business. I'm like, okay, I've got some contacts here now in Ghana. I want to start something, and I sell the products back home in SA, or bring products from SA here in Ghana. First, there's that difficulty of the sending the cash. And then also there's just the whole difficulty of sending the stuff, like your DHL, it's so expensive. Exactly. I was even talking to another friend about how even getting a flight to Ghana, you can find flights that are cheaper to go to London than flights that are cheaper to come here to Ghana. So it's all these things that I think, it's just these minor things that make it so difficult to just do anything amongst ourselves. One example I just want to add in, I recently learned this week that it was only this week that Cote d'Ivoire had a flight that comes straight from Cote d'Ivoire to South Africa. And I was like, guys, in 2022, are you serious? So...
Anyway, Kobe, so since you fall in the diasporan community, how do you, what do you think you guys can do differently that could, maybe you'd have to share your story, how you ended up being diasporan. I think they want to hear the story.
Yeah, so I was born in Botswana and lived there for a while, and then lived in Swaziland, and then moved to Ghana. And then I received a scholarship to come and study in the US. And I've been here ever since. So that's my story in brief. And I like what you said about the need for continental Africans and Africans in the diaspora to be in relationship with each other, for Africans in the diaspora to listen attentively to what the needs and issues are on the ground, and then for there to be some sort of collaboration about the best way to address some of those issues. I really enjoy what the sister from South Africa has been saying about the need to decenter the state in some of our conversations. And I think I need to be clear. I do think people need to be involved in voting and petitioning and demanding accountability from our political leaders. But I think that we also need to exercise some level of agency and creativity and derive those solutions that we need in our immediate communities. So yeah, in terms of how the diaspora can relate to continental Africa, I just think, listening deeply, building relationships and working on collaborative projects.
Yeah. So you are avoiding the question of the underlying things around the American dream. Now, I'll give you another story. There's a Ghanaian doctor. He studied in Ghana like all his life, went to Opoko, went to Achimota, got a scholarship as well. And this is like in the 60s or 70s and 60s probably. And ended up in America. Went to Canada, studied in Canada, ended up in America. Became a prolific gastrointestinal surgeon in America. Ended up in Los Angeles, California. Plied his trade there. Now, he tries to come to Ghana. Like what? I don't know that you know Professor Frimpong Boateng. He set up the cardio center. He was also a diasporan. He was in Germany. And then he came, set up the cardio center. Now, this doctor tried to set up a gastrointestinal center at Kolebun. Came to Ghana, experienced resistance at the time we had a military regime. Experienced some resistance from right? And so he went back with this idea. Probably because he came with the same, I'm come to save you guys. And was resisted, and so ended up going there. Now he goes back, and then he's experiencing, the things about racism and, and the treatment. I mean, he's making his money, he's earning his salary, he's really sought after, but he's still experiencing these subtle things. And because you have a meritocratic society in America, he's naturally rising through the ranks. Okay, he's rising through the ranks by no effort of his. He's not political. He's just doing his job and excelling. This is someone who was said to have taken care of some celebrities and stuff like that. Now he dies, and all his wealth, he was a millionaire. He dies, and all his wealth gets eaten up by the California system, the legal system. All his wealth, everything. Now, so what he was avoiding to talk about is that you can live the African can live the American dream and be comfortable, but the African can live the American dream to the point where he aspires to be like a top dog. Maybe out of 1,000, maybe one will survive. We take Barack Obama technically wasn't an African, but yeah, by color, yes. But to get to the top, you are going to be, a couple of you be clipped, and maybe one person managed to get to the top. Now, this person I'm talking about is my grandfather. And so the story about the American dream and, we're all going to, is very real. And so many people aspire to maybe to get comfortable, but after comfort, there's a point where you'd want to move up, right? Which is normal. So I think that's what he was refusing to talk about, about the underlying things related to the. Or am I? Is that an untruth? Copy.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question.
Okay.
Although I do hear you when you speak about how sometimes Africans can live in America and generate wealth in America, but unfortunately that wealth isn't transferred to other generations.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that an African aspiring to the highest levels in America is almost impossible. He can dream about it, but the only place he can really be fulfilled in his achievements is here. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about. No, not political aspiration. If he can contribute to making change in his country, he's likely to be more fulfilled than trying to climb the ladder of maybe the Western society to the highest point, because that comes with casualties almost always. Maybe there will be one who will survive and be the shining light, right? But that's my personal opinion. I don't know whether you agree. That's the question. Not about transferring of wealth, and that has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, if that's the question, I think that's dependent on the personal goals and values of individual personalities. Because I do know of people who have left the countries of origin
Right.
and built lives here and have been deeply fulfilled. And to your point, I know of others who have come and arrived at some level of material security, but felt that they needed to contribute to their countries of origin, so left that to try and participate in projects of social change. So again, I think it depends on the particular person and their story.
Fair point.
But I do like your larger points about, the need, again, for Africans in the diaspora and continental Africans both can harness their respective energies to addressing certain problems.
Okay, Bukumi, finally, before we, I think this will be the last one. How do you think young Africans can do things differently? What can we do differently? Maybe I'll go around and then we'll wrap it up. What do you think we can do differently to change the narrative?
Okay. Yes, I think firstly, having conversations like this, like trying to also know more about our history as Africans. If you don't know, there's a Yoruba adage that says that if you don't know where you're going, you know where you're coming from, right? So understanding where you're coming from, understanding the knowledge, understanding us, the African ecosystem, is one important factor, one important thing I think we can actually do better. Getting the knowledge or anything in school, we can actually go after actual knowledge, know where we're coming from. So we can also map or draft or decide collectively. I don't know how that's gonna be. I feel what can we do better? Well, really think about it from a mindset of. So I think you talked briefly about the brain drain and going out of the country. Everybody is running away. Well, which is not entirely bad. Man was created to migrate and all of that, but in all of the migration and all of that, we need to also have the sense of home. Exactly. Understand that whatever we do outside of this, you bring it home for the development of your country. When push comes to shove, what they call it, everybody's going to protect theirs, and we only have us as Africans. So no matter how much you run away from home, always know that the development of your home is still important. Everybody, there's this protectionism or something and that is happening all over. So we are still Africans. We need to have that sense of African, the Pan-African sense in anything we do. And I think we're doing fantastic. The young people are actually doing fantastic on technology front, business side, and all of that. So. But even in all of that, we need to actually do more. I would not say, I don't want to put so much burden on us, but I think we're really trying. People are trying.
I see what you mean.
But I just think it's just, like I said, for me, I think mostly instant now. When you see things from your mindset, when you have a mind shift, you can actually produce better results.
True.
Yes.
True. Impilo, what about you? Because they say the dignity of every black person in the world, not just in Africa, is tied to this continent. So what do you think we can do differently as young people? Sorry.
I think the first thing we need to, I always say, is realize that those of us who are having these conversations, amongst our peers, we are the elites, right? In that we have the information, we know the history, we have the opportunity or the platforms to have these innovative conversations. So we have a responsibility to take what we discuss here and take it out to our fellow peers who don't have or who did not have the same luxuries and opportunities and even access that we do. And I say this because, we always talk about like our young demographic has either it becoming this, burden or dividends. But I want to focus it in terms of like the struggles that we have to overcome in our lifetime, which I really think is economic liberation. I think there is that untapped potential for young people to really in our masses, bring about the change that we want to see, but some concerted effort needs to be done in that. And I think beyond us taking our knowledge to those spaces, I think we also need to break the silos. You've got about like 4-5 different countries represented here, and you can see that our challenges really are the same. But I think there aren't enough networks or platforms. I don't know what's missing that's allowing us to convene and connect with one another to make a conceited like wave of change as one solid movement. And I think once we've broken those silos amongst us and realized, what are our strengths and weaknesses and who can contribute what and who can lead what and vice versa, we then need to organize ourselves. We need to have a set mandate of what it is that we want to do. How are we going to do it? And then I think thereafter be able to mobilize accordingly, because if there's one thing we have to our advantage is also technology. I think we see with like the move in pop culture, with fashion, it's been able to really change the whole world and put Africa at the forefront. But again, it was a conceited effort. And I think as young people, who are in the forefront of such conversations, we also need to be able to put in that effort and lead that.
Binta, President Uhuru Kenyatta says we should break down like fiscal barriers. I thought it was a crazy idea, but I actually thought about it. How differently would you think as a Gambian? Like, how do you think we can do the things differently? Barriers, like our borders. It sounds like a crazy idea, but yeah.
That one is a tricky one.
Yeah, very tricky.
Actually, no country can do everything by itself.
Sure.
Of course, we need assistance, support from our neighboring countries in order to develop better. So with regards to that, like youths, we can do so much. First, I think, Pilo mentioned, I think we have to bring so many people on board. Not every youth had an opportunity like this to such a platform where we can discuss about such things. So, but we, the ones with the knowledge, with the information, we can go out there, may conduct so many outreaches to meet the people, to meet the young people wherever they are. So I think that can bring a lot of changes. So those that have even traveled, for me, Africans that have, traveled, they're in Europe, to me, as an individual, you can do better wherever you are. Yeah? It doesn't matter where you are in your continent or you are in Europe or wherever. So if you think you have the means, you have the opportunity to at least contribute to your nation building, why not? It depends on you, the individual.
Yeah.
We can. I think we can.
Yeah.
So I think that's my take.
I think in wrapping up, I think for me, my thing would be that Africans must learn to collaborate. I don't care what trust issues trust issues we have amongst ourselves. I don't care about that. And I think for the last 5 years, I've been consistently interacting with like different, which I'm glad about. People. No, actually, it started way before that with my parents. But with me on a personal level, I think seriously it has started like for the past 5 years. And I think these things are important. These conversations are important. To meet one another, understand our problems, and then learn to collaborate. And I think the young people are doing a better job. Yeah, maybe since the initial pre-independence era, maybe we are the next generation who are making a better effort. I'll give you an example. Let me go to the entertainment scene. I think recently, was it Burna Boy? Burna Boy went on this tour and carried along a couple like of other Africans along with him on the tour. But I think Davido talked about he's going on a re-rise tour or something, and he intends to carry more Africans on that tour. And I think like you may see it as it's just entertainment, but these are the kind of things Africans need in order for us to like get out of this place where which someone decides to call a shithole. Like, we need to realize our collective, like, that our dignity is tied to each other. And so if we can't collaborate and like try and get ourselves and have conversations and, you know, push ourselves out of, like, we are really not going anywhere. And that's, for me, in my opinion, that's the best we can do. And so anyway, it's been nice having you guys. Absolutely, it's been nice. I didn't even realize time was going. It's been really nice. Thank you. Thanks for Bukumi, we want to see your face before you go. Yeah, so thanks for coming. Thanks for the time. This was like a hectic thing trying to put everyone together, but I'm glad it came through. Thanks so much for your time. And Impilo, thank you for your time. Binta, on short notice. So thanks for coming. Bukumi as always, and then Kobe, my guy, my Ghanaian brother. Thanks for showing up for this. So it's another wrap up on the Mashup 233. We'll see you on the next one.